Well, hello ninthers and welcome once again. Wishing you all a very good morning, a very good afternoon and a very good evening based on the time you'll be watching this video. Now this will be my second video of the day because if you all have seen, if you all did see, in the previous day there wasn't a video from me because of some health issues. So this is the second video of the day and we'll be covering with we'll be moving on with the natural vegetation of the equatorial region. Why am I showing you all this picture? Well, this is one of the most important natural region of the equatorial climatic region. This is the Amazon rainforest, and this Amazon rainforest is one of the densest, thickest, broadest, largest, and this is one such rainforest which actually has earned the nickname the lungs of the world. Why so? Because this is very dense, huge amount of trees, huge amount of oxygen being released into the atmosphere from this area, and a lot of carbon dioxide. It is a carbon dioxide sink. The carbon dioxide is being taken into this Amazon rainforest because of the huge amount of trees which is there. Now this Amazon rainforest and the other rainforests of the world make up the most densest regions or densest forests of the world. And what are the main characteristics of the vegetation of these areas? The main characteristics of the vegetations of these areas will be that, now before that, these areas have bright sunshine, high temperature, high humidity, and high amount of rainfall which takes place in these areas. When there is high rainfall and the climatic conditions are good, favorable, and the soil is also favorable, you understand that there will be the amount of trees which will be growing, and the number of trees which will be growing over there will be very huge. So the equatorial region has dense, lush green and luxuriant vegetation. These are called evergreen forests. Why are they called evergreen forests? When we talk of the forests, when we talk of there's another type of forest, the deciduous forests. So these deciduous forests, they shed leaves all together in the dry season. So you must have seen in India or in our places near in Dhanbad and other places of India, you must have seen that the banyan tree, the peepal tree, the neem tree, the other trees which we find in these areas, they during the late winter months before the spring, the tree becomes nearly barren, naked, and none of the leaves are there on the trees. And gradually, just before spring is about to come, or during spring, the spring season, the trees again team up with life. There is life again, and the newer leaves come up, and we have, or the tree is filled with leaves again. So these are deciduous forests. These are deciduous trees. Deciduous trees, they shed all their leaves uh, during the dry season. But the evergreen forests, why do the deciduous trees shed their leaves? It is because during the dry season we do not, or during the late winter season, we do not have much of rainfall which takes place, and the climatic condition is dry. So what happens is that the trees may not be getting as much amount of water as it requires. So what happens is that they shed their leaves so as to survive during the dry season. But the evergreen forests, they receive rainfall throughout the year, and as they are receiving rainfall throughout the year, these forests, they do not need to shed their leaves altogether. So it is, people do think, or students, or even when I was a child, when I was like you all, I used to think that the evergreen forests, they never shed their leaves. No, it is wrong. They shed their leaves. The leaves which become old, they fall down, they die. Those leaves, the leaves are shed, but the leaves do not get shed altogether. They shed, newer leaves come up, but as they are not shedding the leaves altogether, what happens is that throughout the year these forests remain like this only. That is why they are called evergreen forests. Now, characteristics of the trees is that they have broad leaves, broad, very broad leaves. So these broad leaves, why the broad leaves? Because of the heavy amount of rainfall which takes place. As the rainfall will be, or as the heavy rain will be falling, so these broad leaves, they allow the rain to fall properly on the leaves, on the surface of the leaves, and then it slides down, glides down Also because there is huge amount of water which is there in the trees present. Why? Because huge amount of water is there in the soil, also huge amount of rain, or lots and lots of rain is also falling. So what happens is that these trees, they have broad leaves, so as to allow for more transpiration or more water to come out from the leaves through the stomata. Greater or broader the leaf, more will be the number of stomatas in the leaf. Stomatas are small pores, small holes through which the water vapor evaporates from the leaves. So as there is huge amount of water present in the trees, present in the soil, so the trees will be also having a lot of water, and that is why the leaves are very broad, so as to allow for excess water to move out through the large number of stomata. So they have broad leaves. They well, next they have there is this extensive forest belt. If you just look at this, and this over here is the natural vegetation of the world, and if you look at this dark green over here, these dark green areas, these make up the rainforests, or these make up the evergreen forests. And these vast forest belts cover 7 million square kilometer throughout the world, and 7 million square kilometer is a very huge amount of land. And this 7 million square kilometer is very important because these evergreen rainforests, they have huge number of trees, very dense cover of forests, and they take in a lot of carbon dioxide, give a lot of oxygen, making or giving the equatorial forests the nickname the lungs of the world. The trees are very tall, and some of the trees grow to a height 40 to 50 meters. And well, they grow taller. Why? Because they struggle for the sunlight. Because when there are a huge number of trees, when there are lots and lots of trees, so what will happen is that a tree which is, suppose this is one tree, excuse my drawing, forgive my drawing, actually this is another tree, and this is the third tree. What happens is that you can see, because of this first tree and the third tree, the second tree is not getting much sunlight, because the first tree and the third tree is covering this area. So the second tree will have to grow taller than these two trees, so as to reach near the sunlight. So there is this race for the sunlight which is happening, which happens in the rainforests. That is why all the trees which are growing, they have very huge height, and as they are growing, they form a canopy. What is a canopy actually? Canopy is that covering, this the umbrella type of covering which is there, made by the leaves of the trees. So as the trees keep on growing, what happens is that this is one tree. Okay, sorry, let me do it over here only. This is one tree, this is another tree growing, this is another tree growing, this is another tree growing. So what you find over here is that there is this covering which is made by the leaves over here, and this covering is not allowing the sunlight to properly enter in the lower regions of the forest or on the floor of the forest. So this is called a canopy, this umbrella structure which is formed by the leaves of the tall trees, which is not allowing the sunlight to reach in the, or reach the lower reaches of the forest or the floor of the forest. This is a canopy, and the canopies are found at different heights. Next, the trees, well, we are talking this various types of trees and plants, different types of there are different types of climbing trees and plants which will be found in the rainforests. Why? Because in the lower areas, as no sunlight is reaching, smaller trees, creepers, climbers, they will be holding on to the branches of these taller trees, and they'll be moving upwards in order to reach the areas or in order to find sunlight. So there are huge number of climbing plants, tree ferns, parasitic plants, creepers. They'll reach to the top of the canopy in search of sunlight. This region has very dark dense vegetation, and if you move in the floor of the forest, or if you move in the forest in an equatorial area, the forest floor will be very dark. Why? Because sunlight does not reach properly. So this forest floor is this dense vegetation covers and creates an obstruction for the sunlight to reach and penetrate the forest floor. The floor of the forest consists of undergrowth of ferns and short bushes which do not depend much on the direct sunlight. So ferns, bushes will be found in the forest floor, which do not depend on the direct sunlight. Important trees, very important to keep in mind: mahogany, ebony, rosewood, greenheart, rubber, cinchona. The cinchona bark, from the cinchona tree comes one of the most important drug, or quinine, which is there for the treatment of malaria. Hardwood trees can be recognized by the rich dark color. The trees have hardwood, softwood, and there's hardwood. Two different types of wood we'll be finding. So mostly it is hardwood trees in these areas. The dense forests have variety of animals, provide world's richest ecosystem. So these rainforests are the world's richest ecosystem because of the huge amount of trees, because of the large amount of vegetation, or the dense vegetation which is there found in these jungles. What is there is that lots and lots of herbivorous trees, herbivorous animals will be found in these areas. I'm sorry, I just said herbivorous trees. Herbivorous animals will be found in these areas, and as there are lots and lots of herbivorous animals, what happens is that in order to hunt for those herbivores, there will be carnivores, and when there are herbivores, carnivores, there will be other kinds of animals, other species of animals too. So you have a huge amounts of animals in these areas. These make up the world's richest ecosystem. Now, why are humans not able to exploit the rainforests on a commercial basis? One of the most important reason is that the forests are very dense. So machines, people, it becomes difficult for them to move into the forests. The ground is always wet and swampy. Construction of roads, highways, railways is almost impossible. So there is no transportation system as such. That is why in these areas are still untouched, nearly untouched by humans. Mostly it is the tribal people which live in these areas. There are different tribes living in these areas. The cultivation of these areas and the exploitation of these areas is done by those tribal people, but the other ways of commercial exploitation of these areas has not yet been possible. The dense forests have hundreds of species of trees grown side by side over a small area. Thus, the trees are not found in pure stands of a single species, which means that you will not be finding, it is not that there will be a single species of tree or a single variety of tree growing in a huge area. No, you'll be finding in a equatorial area that many different trees are found in a single area. And suppose we are finding, or we want to cut a rosewood tree. So one rosewood tree will be here, the other rosewood tree will be here, maybe the other will be over here. So it becomes difficult to locate and search and to cut for to exploit such particular types of tree. That is why it still is a problem. Nextly, the trees are hardwooded, logs are heavy, cannot flow in water. Thus, rivers being the main highways of transportation, it cannot be utilized. If you remember, in other places in Canada where lumbering takes place, because the wood is soft, what happens is that rivers are used for transporting the wood or the logs. But over here, due to the equatorial forests having mostly hardwood, they do not float that well on the water. The forests are so dense and dark that exploitation becomes difficult due to the impermeability. There is no light reaching the ground, or no light reaching the forest floor. It is easy to have lumbering activities in coniferous forests of the temperate zone. Well, the human response. Actually, how do humans survive in these areas? It is because mostly it is the native people who live over there, and they do not. They have made their own ecosystem. They have made their own ways, and they have found ways to coexist or to live in these climatic conditions over thousands and thousands of years. So they do not like any outsiders coming and exploiting those areas, and they lead a nomadic life. The people over there, the tribal people, they lead a nomadic life. Nomadic life means they keep on moving from one place to another, one forest to another, and these areas are sparsely populated. These areas do not have much population. Why? Because it is very difficult to live and stay in these areas. The pygmies are the natives of the Congo basin, and they live nomadic life by food gathering, hunting, fishing, and shifting agriculture. So they cut one area of the forest, they grow plants and trees, they grow their own plants, they practice agriculture over there, and then after some time, after some years, when that area becomes infertile, they move on to a different region, a different part of the forest. They cut that part of the forest now, and then they again start practicing agriculture. So in the first part when they were there, suppose today they are in this part 1, they are cultivating over here. Tomorrow they move up to this part, and when they leave this first part, what happens is that after a few years time, this first part again, trees again grow in back in these areas. So this way, some parts, well, like Java, Singapore, parts of Indonesia and Southeast Asia are highly developed where natural resources are fully utilized. These are also areas of very dense population. Mainly rubber plantation is practiced in Malaysia. Plantation and subsistence agriculture is practiced in Southeast Asian countries under equatorial region. So mainly it is the subsistence type of agriculture. Subsistence type of agriculture is that kind of agriculture in which the farmers grow their crops in order to survive on the crops and not to sell them commercially. So it is that kind of agriculture which is being practiced in the Southeast Asian countries. Southeast Asian countries like Myanmar, Thailand, you have Sri Lanka, parts of India, you have Philippines, you have Borneo, you have those areas. So those areas have, where the equatorial rainforests are there, you'll be finding subsistence type of agriculture, and mainly you have rubber plantation in Malaysia. So this was about the vegetation and how humans have well adapted to these climatic conditions. In the next video lecture, we'll be talking and we'll be dealing with the other climatic region, that is the monsoonal type of climate. Till then, please take care, stay safe, stay happy, and keep yourself occupied. Thank you.